Good afternoon here in Washington. Good late evening in Kyiv and elsewhere in Europe. My name is John Herbst. I run the Eurasia Center at the Atlantic Council. I have the honor today of speaking with President Petro Poroshenko, who, of course, was president in Ukraine shortly after Moscow began its war on Ukraine in 2014, and whom I've had the honor of knowing, my goodness, for 21 years. When he began, well, not when he began, but when he was in the midst of his career, which led to the presidency, a career we had virtually every senior position in the Ukrainian government. So I will leave it at that as an introduction. Well, actually, I should say that when he became president in late May of 2014, he immediately successfully rallied his people in response to Moscow's aggression. This was, of course, 3+ months after the Russians seized Crimea, and maybe 6 or 7 weeks after they began their war in Donbass. And literally, within 2.5 months of his taking the presidency, Ukrainian forces had almost kicked Russia completely out of Donbass, at which point they sent in the regular army to prevent that from happening. So with that, I'll begin our conversation. And again, it's a great pleasure to welcome you here in Washington. So first, how would you describe the state of the war right now?
First of all, I'm very happy to see all of you here. I'm missing you because I was not in Washington for quite a long period of the time because I don't have a permission to leave Ukraine as a leader of the opposition. And I want to thank John, Ambassador, and Atlantic Council for this unique opportunity. This is extremely important for me. Why it's vital to be now in Washington? Because this is not simply a busy day. This is a decisive day for the future of Ukraine. And this situation, we have an extremely difficult situation on the front line. And at the same time, very new opportunities. What is the three phases of the war, of wild-scale war? Not 11 years war, but war with its 1,000 days. First, it was stage of the demolition war. When Putin sent the troops, it was around 200,000 troops. And when we stopped them, and when we find out what they are delivering to Ukraine, it was the parade uniform with all the records, motivation flag, and they go to celebrate the victory. What at that time stopped Russian troops? Just 4 kilometers from Kyiv. First is the bravery of Ukrainian soldiers and unity of Ukrainian people. Second, Javelin from US. And third, Enlav, Stinger, and Bayraktar. I know what I'm talking about because I am keeping both Javelin and Enlav and know how effective it was. Russia simply was not prepared for that. Russia do not attack hospital, object of the critical energy infrastructure, because they want to keep it for themselves. They think that Ukraine will welcome that. And we call this period demolition. Then it was the phase of the counteroffensive. It started in April 2022, when we threw Russia away from Kyiv. What was the factor for the effective counteroffensive? Two things: bravery of Ukrainian soldiers and unity of Ukrainian people, and HIMARS. With the HIMARS, we destroy the storage of the ammunition, we destroy the center for making decision, and we threw Russian away from Kherson and Kharkiv region. Great success. And then it starts third phase at the beginning of year 2023, which is lasting until now. This is attrition, where the military factor is not so important. And Putin wants to destroy the nation. Think that we cannot win the battle of time. The situation at the front line is not having any significant changes. Putin and we pay a very high price. We cannot outman Putin. Why? Because he has a significantly bigger mobilization and manpower resource. We have less than 1 million. Putin has 25 million. Putin has more money. Do you know how much money Putin planned for the state budget as a military budget for the year 2025? $143 billion. And this is 33% bigger than in the year 2024. And this is almost 10% of the GDP. Compared with the European expenditure for the military, or even American. Ukraine received for the military budget less than 50 billion. Putin almost 150. How we can fight? This is not from our taxpayers. This is all together with the partners. We cannot outman, but we should outsmart, out-technology, and out-motivation. And no one single moment in this war I was not an optimist. So I was an optimist, because it's impossible to be the president or the leader of the country in a state of war and not to believe in the victory. What is the other factor which is important? Do you know how much Shahid attack drones Ukraine were attacked in October? 1,740. And I assure you, no country in the world can have an effective air defense against such a big number of attacking drones which have a range more than 2,000 kilometers. War is changed. Tank or armed personal carrier or even air carrier is not so important. Long-range missile, radio electronic warfare system, unmanned drones, these type of things. When I can destroy a Russian tank which costs $3 million, with a drone costs $300. And 70% from these attack drones was Iranian. That means Iran is full participant of the war. Significant part of the aggressor. Do you know how many missiles we were attacked in October and November? 217 ballistic missiles. 45% of them was North Korean production. That was, without North Korea, Russia definitely would exhaust. And could you imagine that the North Korea and Iran supplied to Russia 30% more artillery shells than all the NATO supplied to Ukraine? Unbelievable. Do you know how much cost the artillery shell produced in Pennsylvania? more than $5,000. Do you know what price North Korea supplied to Russia? Artillery shell, $400. Compare and think how we fight. That's why we should make a significant changes. And these changes should be done with a new opportunity with the president-elect. I know what I'm talking about. I worked with Trump for more than 3 years. I want to remind you that we received the first lethal weapons, Javelin, which I mentioned from the very beginning, from Trump during my first visit to the Oval Cabinet. I want to tell you that I was immediately received the special presidential envoy, Ambassador Kurt Volker, as a presidential representative for implementation Minsk agreement. And by the way, do you know the 5 preconditions for Minsk agreement we agreed together with Kurt, Chancellor Merkel, and President Hollande? It was 5 non-compromise, which is fully included in the Minsk agreement. First, non-compromise on the sovereignty and national identity of Ukraine. We never would be Russian colony again. Second, non-compromise on the territorial integrity of Ukraine. We never give up and never accept any tiny piece of Ukrainian territory beyond the Russian sovereignty. Point number 3, non-compromise on the armed forces of Ukraine. We never accept decrease of the ability of Ukrainian armed forces, which was created by my team, to protect Ukraine. Fourth, non-compromise on sanction. It should be sanction from the hell. The KPI of sanction should be to cut volume of Russian export and to cut Putin's ability to finance the war. And fifth, I do not accept that it would be any limitation for Euro-Atlantic integration of Ukraine. Future, our NATO membership. I want to remind you that Putin attacked Ukraine in the year 2014, when Ukraine was officially, under the constitution and the legislation, was a neutral state. That's why all this explanation of Putin is just you understand me. And I'm proud that I put Euro-Atlantic integration and European integration as a future membership of NATO is obligatory for any government, any president of Ukraine as a part of Ukrainian constitution. And with all this situation, I really think that this 5 non-compromise is a very important part for any future point of compromise to stop the war. We should make peace through strength. And that's why I'm here, to make Ukraine stronger with the Democratic administration and with the Republican administration. Because now bipartisan support is so important as never before. And Ambassador put me on the leg that said I should finish. We should make a little bit more time for the Q&A session.
No, we do, but we actually have at least 1 or 2 more questions for you. We have time for plenty of time for Q&A. That tells you when this part of the conversation ends. Okay. Your answer was so comprehensive, you answered several of the questions I was going to ask. So I'll jump to this. Now, you just mentioned these 5 compromises, which should be part, or these 5 positions, which should be part of any...
5 non-compromises.
Not compromise, right, should be part of any durable peace agreement. Some of them are not fully consistent with what we understand about the Trump peace initiative. If you were meeting with President-elect Trump tomorrow, what advice would you have for him regarding the war in Ukraine? But before you answer, for the audience, we're taking questions both for those in-house with us. We have a microphone. For those not in-house, you can send a question in at askac.org. So, Mr. President, over to you.
First of all, I really hope that I meet with President Trump in the near future. And second, what would be my piece of advice? Point number one, based on my 5 years experience to communicate with Putin. First, obligatory and very strong message. Please, don't trust Putin. Putin, as a KGB officer, was specially trained for one important thing: how to lie. Please do not trust Putin. This is important. Not only for the Trump, but for the whole team. Because Putin has a certain charisma, and the person who met him not very often the first time, it seems to me, okay, I reached the agreement. No. No chance. Why? Because Putin don't need Crimea. Putin absolutely don't need Donbass or Zaporizhia or Kherson. Putin needs the whole Ukraine. Even no. Putin wants that Ukraine stop exist. And it would be a province of Russia. And that's why not any preliminary agreement can be reached will not satisfy Putin. And there is no any instrument for the guarantee of all the agreement which can be reached with Putin except of the NATO. So please, do not trust Putin. Point number two. I think that maybe President Trump don't really need it, but just in case. Please don't be afraid of Putin. Because Putin understands only one language. I speak with him. And this is not an English language. Or even not the German language, despite of the fact that he lives in Dresden and think that Dresden is also part of the natural Russian interest. I tried to speak with Putin in the Russian language. Bad news, he is also not understand it. And the only language Putin understands is a language of strength. If you have a strong position, you will reach the results. If you fear Putin feeding with your fear, and you lost the battle. That would be my words to the president-elect. Point number three. Please don't be afraid of Russian defeat. Don't listen this blackmail that, okay, it would be house, it would be bear with the nuclear. No, don't be afraid of Russian defeat. And last, don't be afraid of Ukrainian victory. Because that would be very great things. I think for the first meeting, that's enough.
I'm afraid I'm going to give you one more question.
Please.
All right.
At your service.
The Biden administration has been famously timid in providing arms to Ukraine. This picks up upon one of your points. Because they had been intimidated by Putin's nuclear bluster. Despite the West many times passing Putin's red lines, there are some loud supporters of President-elect Trump who have likewise been intimidated by Russia's nuclear threats. How do you evaluate Putin's use of the nuclear card?
Just a simple and empty attempt of blackmail. Very Putin style. But I already answered on this question, because when I said, please don't believe Putin. Same when he tried to blackmail the whole world with the nuclear weapons. Putin have a fully understanding, have no illusion that immediately when he uses the nuclear weapons, he will stop exist. And we should deliver absolutely crystal clear and loud message to him. Believe me, this is the most effective thing.
Okay, thank you. So you're the president, and I'm just the former ambassador, so you win the tug of war here on the stage, and we'll turn to audience questions. So if anyone in the audience wants
You are ambassador, I'm former president. So
we have an open mic there. Just get up to the mic, and the first one there gets the first question. And please identify yourself, please.
Michael Washura, I'm with The Insider. Can you hear me?
a little bit closer to the microphone, a little bit louder.
Michael Washura, I'm with The Insider. You mentioned the fact that there had been arms deliveries to Ukraine before February 24th, 2022. You mentioned the NLAWs, Stingers, Javelins. The Russians, of course, knew that these were being delivered. And one reason we know this is because on February 21st, at the infamous Security Council meeting, Sergei Shoigu talked about how the Ukrainian military was preparing for war. They also knew that we had their plans because they had been showing them on their own television, with the routes from Belarus and everything. On February 23rd, you were interviewed by Yaroslav Trofimov of the Wall Street Journal, and you warned him that the invasion was going to start sometime after 4 a.m. I have several other friends who got calls like that. Absolutely. Everyone who was reasonably well connected in Kyiv knew the invasion was starting, knew that the Ukrainian military was ready, knew that there were javelins and NLAWs and Stingers. But the Russian soldiers who were woken up in the middle of the night, stripped of their cell phones and sent into Ukraine, were not told where they were going. Did anybody think that was weird?
Excuse me, are you a journalist? Yes. You should make a special investigation of what's going on 2 weeks before 24th of February. And I would happily give you all information I have. I like your style. First time when I have a floor in the parliament was September 2021. This is easy to check. And I said immediately we should give 60 billion hryvnia to the armed forces because the Russian aggression is unavoidable. Stop spending money on the велике будівництво, крадівництво, great building program, and finance the armed forces. In the most combat brigade, you have less than 50% of the soldiers. Your soldiers receive their salary less than the security in the market. You do not have an arm jacket. You do not have a Kevlar helmet because the person who should supply was under the political pressure and arrest. At the end of the day, country is not ready for the Russian invasion. We need to deliver Stugna anti-tank directly to the possible target. Instead of that, they start to demine Chongar. Nobody can understand why it's happened. Me as a president put 3 brigades on the administrative border of the Crimea. They will withdraw. The fake story that one of the soldiers who tried to connect the mines and blast the bridges, this is not true because the mines was checked 6 times a day and have a triple system for the insurance. Okay, everything else I reserve for our future book. But the conclusion, country was not ready for the war.
Okay, we'll take a second question from the...
And now is the most important thing. Poland is not ready for the war. Romania is not ready for the war. Bulgaria is not ready for the war. Slovakia is not ready for the war. And, sorry for saying that, US is not ready for this type of the war. Same way, like I said in September year 2021, please, that would also be part of the advice to the president-elect.
Thank you. Okay. Please.
Prepare your economy for the war. You should switch it to the military rail. There does not exist any more important thing than security. Your artillery shell should cost $400, not $6,000. And that's possible with a massive production. Prepare your armed forces for the war. Because while we win the first stage of the war, because our troops has a combat experience, Russian not. And I know what does it mean for us when I was Supreme Commander-in-Chief in the year 2014. Prepare your armed forces for the war. And third, please, prepare your people. You should be more responsible, more united, because again, unity and democratic resilience in the year 2022 play a very important role.
Thank you. Okay, please identify yourself.